I recently ran into a pretty prominent mountain bike reviewer out of the bike park, and he said that the Polygon Colossus DH9, was one of the most impressive bikes to come out in the last few years. And he's right. The DH9 delivers pro-level performance for an unprecedented price. And honestly, it might just be the bike that saves the downhill industry. But more on that later. First, let's take a closer look at the bike and see if we can put a finger on what made that reviewer, and of course me, think so highly of it. Woo! The first and most obvious thing that sets the DH9 apart is probably the frame. These days, a lot of brands' so-called downhill bikes are simply their enduro frame with a new rocker link and a longer stroke shock. But not Polygon. They built this thing from the ground up to be a dedicated gravity machine. It has 200 millimeters of rear travel delivered through a 6-bar linkage design called Independent Floating Suspension, or IFS. And yeah, it's as complex as it looks. The IFS platform isolates braking, pedaling, and suspension forces to give you a more active, ground-hugging rear end that stays composed under pressure. It's also plenty supportive in the mid-stroke, allowing you to pop off lips and find extra pockets of speed while you're pumping. So whether you're sprinting out of a corner, braking into a steep chute, or sending a huge jump line, the suspension stays responsive and predictable. Another huge standout feature on the bike is its adjustability. The DH9 comes not with one, but with 2 flip chips. The first, which is located in the rear dropout, lets you swap between a full 29-inch setup or a mullet configuration with a 27.5-inch wheel in the back, all without messing up your geometry. This is huge, allowing you to dial in the bike for different types of tracks or personal preferences. The second flip chip sits in the shock mount and allows you to switch the geometry into a high or low setting. The high setting has a 63-degree head tube angle and a bottom bracket height of 356 millimeters. Flipping it to low drops the bottom bracket by 5 millimeters and slackens the front end by 0.4 degrees, all the way down to 62.6. Just like the rear wheel adjustment, this helps you set the bike up for your specific terrain and riding style. So it's equally at home on big groomed jump lines as it is on raw, technical downhill trails. Other geometry numbers include 445mm chainstays across all 4 sizes, striking a nice balance between stability and playfulness. And it's the same story at the front end of the bike. Reach numbers aren't overly blown out of proportion, making the bike easy and intuitive to ride, whether you're just starting out on your dual crown journey or you're a seasoned veteran. Personally, I've spent most of my time on the bike in the high setting, which I feel like was the perfect sweet spot that's still low and slack enough for steep rocky rolls, but also poppy and playful on the jump lines. And the same can be said about the mullet setup. The smaller rear wheel makes it easy to throw the back of the bike around, while the 29-inch front wheel irons out the chunk, helping you to maintain speed. But of course, a good frame is only half of the equation, and it's when we move into the components that the DH9's value really starts to become apparent. You're getting top-tier parts across the board, and nowhere is this more visible, literally, than when you look at the suspension. You get a 203mm Fox 40 factory up front and a Fox Float X2 factory shock in the rear. The factory level means that yes, you get the shiny and supposedly extra slippery Kashima coating, but also, and arguably more importantly, the best internals Fox offers. This means smoother suspension and a wider range of adjustment to fit the demands of any rider. And when I say any rider, I mean it. These are the same components the best riders in the world use, and the same can be said about the group set. The drivetrain is SRAM's top-of-the-line XO DH7 Speed. It's downhill-specific, race-ready, and built to be bomb-proof. The bike also comes equipped with a bash guard and chain guide for extra security. For stopping power, Polygon went with the TRP DHR Evo brakes and 203mm rotors front and rear. These are widely recognized by industry experts as some of the most powerful and consistent brakes on the market, more than capable of the repeated abuse they see on a bike like the DH9. And if you think that Polygon might cut corners on the wheels or tires, then you'd be wrong. The DH9 comes spec'd with DT Swiss FR541 rims laced to DT240 hubs, one of the lightest and most reliable downhill rated wheel sets on the market. Speaking of wheels, it's worth noting that the bike comes stock in a mullet configuration, 29 up front, 27.5 in the rear. But again, it can take a 29-inch rear wheel via the flip chip we mentioned earlier. These DT Swiss wheels are wrapped in Schwalbe Taki-Chan tires with the super gravity casing and Addix soft rubber compound. That's a lot of words, but it essentially means they're some of the strongest, grippiest tires Schwalbe makes. The tread pattern on the Taki-Chan features tall, squared-off knobs that dig deep into loose terrain while maintaining predictable edge hold in corners. It's incredibly confidence-inspiring on steeps and in blown-out berms. Rounding out the part list is a full race-face cockpit, including an Atlas direct mount stem and some massive 820mm wide Atlas bars. Not only do these provide pro-level strength, they also look pretty sweet too. In short, the DH9 isn't a just good enough build to fit the price point, but everything on this bike, from the Fox suspension to the Taki-Chan tires, has a clear purpose: to excel on the biggest hits and fastest downhill trails. You usually have to spend thousands more to get a build like this, but thanks to Polygon, this pro-level performance is now accessible to the rest. And like I said at the start of this video, I think that might just help save the downhill industry. Now, what exactly do I mean by that? Well, let me explain. Downhill bikes have been fading from the spotlight over the past few years, despite the fact that more and more riders are getting into gravity riding. So what gives? Well, they're usually quite expensive and of course are highly specialized. You're not going to take one on a 10-mile trail ride. So instead, many riders have been switching to a long travel enduro bike, which can do a decent job of mimicking DH performance while still being pedaled around. And when a proper downhill rig costs 5 to 10 grand, it's no wonder fewer people are buying them. But the DH9 flips that narrative on its head, coming in at a cost that's nearly half of most similarly spec'd competitors, meaning it's a much more realistic choice for folks looking to get into downhill racing or take the bike park game to the next level. Polygon even sells a lower spec version, the DH7, that's even more affordable, but still gets the same bomb-proof frame and even shares many of the same components. So I guess what I'm trying to get at here is that what Polygon has done is make downhill relevant again. They've made it accessible. They've given downhill riders a chance to own a proper gravity rig without going broke, and that could very well breathe new life into the DH segment. So if the DH9 is starting to sound a lot more like your next bike, then you can find a link in the description below and go and check it out and buy it for yourself. While you're down there, drop me a comment if you still have any lingering questions about the DH9 or other similar Polygon bikes. After you've done that, get out there and get ripping.